Hi. In this COVID period, in lockdown, perhaps like many others, we're reflecting on the past, us old timers who have been around a long time doing Aikido. And before I start what I want to talk about, I was thinking back of when I was a very young man. I started when I was 23 at Aikido. I used to drive to London once I become Orange Belt because there was a dojo there called the Hut. It was at the back of a pub in Hillingdon in London. And that's where I had judo, boxing. Didn't have boxing or judo when I was there, but before the Aikido was a full-time club. And I was just reflecting back about how we meet friends in life. Many of us won't go to a sport and activity unless our friends go with us or they suggest to us, we suggest to them. And then you go, but one of you don't stick at it for some reason. There's always an excuse. Perhaps an excuse is a bad thing to say. Perhaps it's not for us. We work it out and we find that it's not for us. But Aikido did turn me on, and nearly 50 years on, it's still turning me on. It's quite amazing what we get out of it, really. Anyway, I would travel there every Sunday. It doesn't matter what the weather was. We used to drive, me and my friend. And if he couldn't make it, I would drive on my own, because that was the place to train. They were the best in England at the time, because there was very, very few clubs. It was the mecca to me of all dojos. And you meet new people, you start training with different people, and once you find somebody who's either compatible or you think, oh, I'll train with this person because they're really good and I want to be as good. You might even think I am as good. Our egos are on full alert when we're young, I think. And I met one particular person. He trained and trained all the time. And one winter's day, I went up there, and it's a big wooden building. It's called the Hut, and it is a hut, but like a large old building that I think the RAF and that used to use them in World War II. I don't know if it was their offices or command posts. Anyhow, this one was behind the pub. Perhaps I'll look into it one day to find out exactly why it was there. It had a pair of doors that opened into the garden. And I think, like all of us, Aikido has to be fun. It has to be joyful, enjoy what we're doing. And most of the time, in my Aikido early days, I love doing the techniques, but more importantly, I love having fun. I like winning. But if the other person was good as well, I really enjoyed taking ukemi as well. But I made it pretty hard for them. I was a stubborn so-and-so. It had to work or else I wouldn't go down. And yeah, one day, I got the devilment in me. It was icy outside and really cold in the dojo. Heaters were non-existent. You just had to warm the body and man up, I suppose, in those days. Not the luxuries of a nice sports hall. Well, I'd noticed that I always trained in one particular spot, and we were kneeling down to start the class. And I noticed there was just a smear of ice where the wind had been blowing under the 2 wooden doors from the garden. And I saw this slither of ice, and I thought to myself, I know what I'll do. I'll play a trick on my friend. So I asked Mr. Foster, who was a sensei then, may I open the doors? He looked a little strange, being such a cold day, but he knew how hard we trained, and so he allowed us to do it. I opened the doors, and as we trained, at the appropriate moment, I threw my friend. He hit the ice, he slid, and he ejected outside onto the grass. Mr. Foster looked and said, what's wrong with that boy? And I will always remember that to this day. Never told anybody. You're hearing it now. But you see, I schemed that because to have fun, because that's what Aikido should be. When it stops becoming fun, perhaps we need a break. Don't just stop, but perhaps have a break. Think about what you do want out of life, what you want out of your Aikido life. So I spotted the ice and the detail on the mat, and no one else did. My friend was sitting next to me. I knew I was going to be training with him because we had so much fun together. We trained a lot. Or should I say, beat each other up a lot. But I spotted the film of ice on the mat, and I prepared tactfully. So that's really a technique in itself. To check the ground around you, as Sensei would say, when you're in front of your opponent. I checked the ground, I saw the ice, I waited for the appropriate moment, threw him in the appropriate technique, knew that he would be on his back. It slid him into the garden. I had a good laugh. He perhaps not so much a good laugh. An eye for detail, and that's what this particular film is about. Travelling around the world, following Saito Sensei, even in the early days, there would be anything from, I'm going to guess, minimum of 80 upwards, sometimes hundreds of people on the seminars. We would talk about it afterwards and say, how does Sensei see someone right at the back or in the middle of the pack? How does he see someone out of all those people and shouts at them, telling them they're doing it wrong? How do you notice these things? Well, I now know years on, but at the time we didn't. If you're a 5th Q or a 5th Dan listening to this, we all have eyes. We start with the eyes. Hopefully it becomes even more developed and becomes senses, so you sense things. But for the moment I'd like to just show you a small experiment of the eyes. I've placed these cocktail sticks just in my hand here. Let's just open that gap up so you don't think there's a trick. Okay, now can you see any difference? If you look closely, of course you will see a difference, because there's one that I've made different to the others. We never dare ask Sensei how he spotted them. Why would he pick one student out of, let's just say, even 80, the minimum amount of people? How would he pick them out? Shout at them, telling them they're doing it wrong. Well, now I know, I don't need to ask. As you've just seen with the cocktail sticks, if the picture is wrong, it doesn't need to be a fifth dan. You can see it with your own eyes. A normal human being. But what you have to do is, you have to look, and when you look across all the students, let's say they're performing the same techniques, when the picture is wrong, it jumps to you. You don't have to search for that. So when the picture is wrong and you spot it, that's the time to correct that person. Now, many people, they don't like being corrected. If a fifth Q tells a fifth Q how to do their technique, the fifth Q will think, well, they're the same grade as me, and object. When I was a third dan, I was asked to take the class by a fifth dan. I'd just been on one of Sato Sensei's seminars, and I was asked to demonstrate. When we went afterwards in the changing room, a third dan said to me, "What do you think you're doing telling me what to do? You're only a third dan as well." You see, I wasn't trying to be horrible. I was trying to say, but the picture's wrong. But people think that you're possibly arrogant when you say the picture's wrong. They don't like to be told. None of us like to be told. So, video yourself occasionally. At the moment, it's mainly weapons. You perhaps can do kemi, exercises, shadow techniques. But video yourself once or twice a year is my recommendation. And look at yourself. Don't look blindly. Tell yourself, that looks wrong. You will actually sense it as well as see it. But if you deny it, perhaps you will deny it all your Aikido career. Thank you for listening. I hope this information's helpful, and please subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying the films. Thank you.